eyes may be able to see, but without a heart, you cannot feel.
What's up, everybody? This is Siosi Samuels, and you are tuning into episode 72 of the It Will Come Show. Today, we're going to be talking about Slack communities, Donut.ai, and also Reddit's new community point system that is actually based on, I think, Ethereum, which is another cryptocurrency blockchain project for those of you who are not familiar with this world. Okay, so let's dig right into it. So just going to go into screen share. All right. So actually the first article we have here is about Slack. So this article is Grocery Runs, Donations, and Memes Inside the Rise of Neighborhood Slack Groups During the Lockdown. So this is actually what sparked today's episode because it really was interesting to see just how quickly Slack has risen, right, as sort of a main community platform. For those of you who are not familiar with Slack, Slack is actually a messenger-based communication system that was actually built for teams. But in times like these, because a lot of people are familiar with the brand Slack, they've been using it to sort of run their own community efforts as well. I've been a huge fan of Slack since the early days, and there was always potential for it to be a much larger community platform. And so it's interesting to see now how people are taking out of just the team-based workflow and making it something for online communities. So here, this just shows examples, and well, isn't this sad? Medium, you've got a paywall. So I won't be able to show you the rest of this because I haven't signed in. But essentially, this article was just looking at examples in the United States of Slack groups that were banding together to organize and help neighbors in need. So this is a strong use case for how people are starting to use it for their own personal lives and how they're using it, especially during lockdown. Right? Of course, Slack isn't the only application that is being used. You have everything from WhatsApp to Discord to Microsoft Teams. There's quite a few around, but Slack is definitely a name that is being attached to our other contenders of online applications right now that are becoming popular, including Zoom, Netflix, etc. So next article we have here is communities come together on Slack to create Bed Buy Strong. Stay. I think it's Stay Strong. Is it Stay? But yeah, again, this is an example of how Slack is being used to help deliver essentials to New Yorkers. Once again, in the United States, I'll try and find some examples from other countries around the world. But yeah, you can see here, in terms of what sparked it, I thought about the neighborhood as a whole and thought, this may be a time when we don't get a lot of help from the government. We're seeing a lot of holes in social safety nets, and I just thought we need to organize online just in case there's a lockdown, and we need to think geographically. Now, this is a very interesting point, right? I think there's a lot of people here, even in Asia, from Asia to Europe to the United States, right? We are seeing people kind of like run to the government and seeking their leadership or help. But if you are truly community-oriented, you'll know when to sort of take things into your own hands, right? Of course, government can assist, but they should not be relied upon or depended upon all the time. I think there are many things that local citizens can do, and if anything, I remember Barack Obama saying that if there's anything he learned during his time as president, it was that there was the true power came from when people banded together. Right, normal average citizens came together for a common cause, and during this time, it's so great to see how people are sort of pushing the edge, innovating a little bit in terms of how they can assist one another during these times. Human beings are a creative, innovative bunch, and especially when many are pushed to sort of the corner, you'll see sort of what people can come up with in order to get people to rally together, to collaborate, for better or for worse. But I think what is encouraging, right, through these type of articles and these type of stories is that people are saying, we might not get a lot of help from the government, right? And all these social safety nets, which we thought will help secure us, is not actually that safe. So why not do something about it? And that's the attitude that I think most people should have. Of course, do things lawfully, legally, to your best abilities, but do something. Also, it is Bed Stuy Strong. Community consists of software engineers, data scientists, and system engineers. I mean, this is great. I mean, and this is actually how even businesses get formed, right? Is when a group of people just band together for a common cause, and especially in times of a crisis, you can see what gets pushed out. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about is for those who are actually using Slack communities or Slack groups. I've been using Slack, as I said, from the very early days, and there are ways in which you can set it up to make it a lot more efficient and effective, right? Because it can handle the scale quite well, there is this bot called Donut. Now, it's used primarily for onboarding employees, and if you're wondering what a bot is, if you're familiar with browsers and how they have extensions or plugins, right, to add additional functionality to your browsing experience. In Slack, they just call them bots or integrations that you can integrate into Slack to assist you. It's like having little helpers, with you. And so with Donut, this here is just a bot integration that you add to your Slack ecosystem, and it can assist you with some of maybe the more repetitive things, right, that can be automated, but still allows you to connect more meaningfully with people in your organization. So Donut will essentially assist with the onboarding process, right? It can do the welcome messages. It can direct people to the community guidelines. It can pair people up, and that's actually probably the most interesting part of Donut is the pairing up of people. So what happens is, let's have a look here. Okay, so in Slack, right, Donut will message you like this, right? Hello, I'm here to help you get your teammates by pairing blah, blah, blah. Now it says teammates in some of our online communities that we've set up at Faya, and just a disclaimer, this show is sponsored by Faya, F-A-I-A, or firecorp.com. And when we are assisting clients with building their online communities, this bot can be very useful in connecting people up, especially if you've got a larger team or organization and then now online communities, right? So here, because you can customize things in Donut, you would just change, say, teammates to community, right? I'm here to help you get to know your community by pairing everyone in a specific channel, okay? So as you can see, Siosi says, thanks, Donut. And then Jack says, sounds great, can't wait, right? And that can be plugged into your Google Calendar, and away you go. You'll have a sort of a meeting time, right, set up for you both to get to know one another. Build bonds across departments or distances. So you can see here, welcome. Every 2 weeks, I'll match you with an engineer from another office. What office are you in? Dublin, San Francisco, yada, yada, yada. And so, right, for this, if you have an online community that's global, you can actually set up multiple, say, city channels, right, for each of the cities that you have people in, because the geography still matters in terms of setting up more time zones that are in sync with one another, right? And so the idea is when it comes to growing communities, you want to have, you want people to connect, but at the same time, you want them to connect around meaningful things. Facebook, of course, knew this, that, connecting the world was not enough. They then needed to focus on groups, right, and help fostering that using the technology, and not the other way around. So here, then Donut will go in and find out which office you are in, and then set up members in those channels. And as you can see here, make mergers a success. Welcome, meet the team. Every week I'll match you with a new colleague. Which team are you on, right? This now goes into, if you have sub-communities or communities of interest, where, say, for example, you want to create some clubs, right? You've got a book club, maybe you've got an archery club, or maybe even got like a hot yoga club, right? You could actually get people to meet each other across each of these different clubs, if that's what you're aiming for, right? To get some cross-pollination. Next up, lottery program, right? This here is actually really good for if you have a special key person of influence in your community, right? It might be the founder, the CEO, or just someone special, right? Maybe a special guest. You can actually then use this Donut bot to actually do a lottery, right? So say, tune in for the next 24 hours and one person is going to be randomly picked to have a one-on-one with the CEO, the founder, the special guest, which I think is a pretty cool feature, right? And you can see here, you can have more than 2 people connected. It's a Google Calendar integration, and then custom intro messages. So I highly recommend Donut if you haven't tried it out already. We use it a bit for online communities that we help companies set up, and that can be anywhere from, if you're looking at co-working spaces to even blockchain projects, right? Especially in the cryptocurrency world, there are a lot of online communities, and a lot of them who are using Slack. So, all right, so that's Donut, highly recommended. The next thing I wanted to show you guys, I think we're over here. Cool. So this particular post was on Twitter. Growing a community is more like growing a tree than building a house. I actually would probably say a tree more like a garden, and a garden can have a fair few plants in them, right? But because there's a very organic aspect to communities where it's really, if there are any ethnographers out there, or people who have dealt with observing cultures, right, in different parts of the world, there is an observation element, right, where you can't have everything laid out at the beginning like a house blueprint. You can do the best to strategize, right, and to have as much as you can at the beginning, but there is a very organic element to building communities. And a lot of it is going to come from having very sort of clear direction at the beginning, all right, overall look, and then as things are growing, there's going to be elements from the community itself, which you can then turn into processes or, just frequent rituals or traditions, right? And that's the beauty of like culture and community in general. Whether it is, your local neighborhood, or now more frequently into the business realm. Right, so you don't need to have blueprints, and it's just something that I agree with. Just start bringing people together, and over time, your community will organically find its form. Now, remember, just to add to this, it's not necessarily just throw people together and the community will form, because there needs to be a purpose as to why these people are coming together as well, right? Because just putting random people together, they can just disperse and then go off and do their own thing as well, right? So at the beginning, I think it is important who is sort of building the garden to actually have some form of direction, right? So that there is a North Star that everybody's moving towards at the beginning, and you kind of tightly control that at the beginning, and over time you let up, right? Because sometimes if you actually have it too loose at the beginning, essentially what you see happen is the community move towards a direction of the loudest voice in the community, right? And they might not necessarily be the person you want to be steering the direction of the community. So these are things that you just need to be aware of or careful of. Okay. All right, and finally here to this part, right, the Reddit community points. So this I saw actually on Twitter, and it's interesting how it's come up again, because this isn't actually a new idea. This is something that was brought up, I think, about a year or two ago, where Reddit, the famous Reddit, was looking at creating a community point system, but using blockchain. And in this case, they're looking at using Ethereum. Whether that would be a good idea or not is remain to be seen. But Reddit a content aggregator site, is working on a blockchain-based point system to reward its communities. Revealed by a Reddit user, Mago Crypto, the so-called community points will feature a new subreddit system, giving extra benefits to the users of the platform. So yes, here, right, this was the tweet that I saw about 4 days ago. So this is from Vitalik, who is the founder, I think founder or co-founder of Ethereum. He's at least the most influential head in this ecosystem. If you haven't heard of Ethereum before, Ethereum is up there with Bitcoin. Right, when Bitcoin's talked about, usually you will see Ethereum as well. Right, it's probably the next largest cryptocurrency blockchain project that came out after BTC. So you can see here Bitcoin, Ethereum. Right, you often see those two together. And essentially, the reason why Ethereum. Oh, sorry, I didn't even show you this screen. So let's do that again. All right, so here, this is what I was referring to. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Ethereum. Okay, so we have, so Vitalik, right? The reason why Ethereum got created was because essentially there was some politics within the BTC community, if you want to call it that, and Vitalik essentially wasn't allowed to do some of the things that he wanted to do on Bitcoin itself, and so he ended up creating Ethereum. So interestingly enough, the birth of all the cryptocurrencies in the world that you heard about probably came from this sort of little event whereby Ethereum was created because all the ideas he had just wasn't being applied to Bitcoin. And so when Ethereum got created, so many of these other cryptocurrencies got created, and many of them were actually built on top of Ethereum. But actually what Ethereum can do, Bitcoin can do. All right. So again, I won't geek out too much about this today, but this is actually part of the reason why I'm very fascinated by the connections between sort of community work and community building and blockchain projects in general, cryptocurrencies, etc. Because there's a lot of close sentiment to, or there's a lot of connections between how cryptocurrencies were grown, right, and the sentiment there, and then also the price correlation of each of these projects when it was unregulated, right? So it was very fascinating to see that essentially, if you looked at the sentiment on Twitter or Reddit or any of these type of forums for these cryptocurrencies, the community sentiment, it would actually be reflected in the price of those cryptocurrency projects. It's changed a bit now because more regulation has come, but it was very fascinating to watch in the early days. So yeah, Reddit, so they're looking at a reward system. They're looking to use Ethereum, and this is going to be interesting to see whether they actually go through with it or not, and if it will actually be of benefit, right? And I think that's the important part. And then finally over here, I wanted to show this. This is a tweet about a guy who joined something called Twitch app. So I'm going to bring it up here so you can see. Twitch is it's like essentially a Twitter for Bitcoin. When I say Bitcoin, I'm talking about BSV. So let's just quickly log in. So Bitcoin SV, I'm just going to log in here. So this is actually using a Bitcoin wallet. All right, so you can see here, start to sign in. And then it's going to take me into Twitch. All right. And you'll see that there are a lot of similarities to Twitter. However, it's all being run on and through Bitcoin, right? And what this means is that in this ecosystem, if you want to like, comment, or retweet something, they call it branching in this ecosystem, right? You like it and you actually pay. Okay, and now you're probably wondering why would somebody pay for this when Twitter is free, right? But this actually comes to data, privacy, and what you own or don't, right? Censorship, etc., all of that sort of stuff. Let's have a look here. Right here, you can see I earn money from people who like or follow me. Somebody follows me, I get 8 cents. Somebody likes what I'm doing, 4 cents, 2 cents, etc. Now, during this time, this becomes a very good way for people who actually want to produce things of value and actually earn some money if they find themselves out of a job. And let's go to my profile. As you can see, we earned $26 just from being on this platform, right? And that's crazy. That's crazy awesome. But I think what's most important here is sort of the behavior changes. So people who like on Twitter, right? There's online bullying, cyberbullying, right? In this type of ecosystem, actually, people could bully, but every time they bully you or try to say something mean or bad or whatever, they are going to have to pay me, right? And so at least there's a cost to this bullying if that's what they want to do. And for people who are on the receiving end, they might still be hurt by the words, but they're also going to get paid. And it's interesting because we've already seen people who actually want to troll or bully others. They're so reluctant to paying for that because usually they can do it for free, right? They don't feel the consequences. But in this type of ecosystem, there are financial consequences, right? The more you want to do it, the more you pay. And in the future, who knows? You might see a point where individual users could set their own prices for how much it costs to actually comment on their posts, right? So if there's a particular person trolling you, you could just set it so that user, if they want to keep trolling you, you can set the price for them, right? And this just becomes very interesting behaviorally, especially for an online community. So yeah, shout out to the guys at Twitch. You guys are doing a crazy awesome job. And it's really cool to be seeing this done on Bitcoin SV because it's utilizing the original Bitcoin blockchain, right? And it's showing what is possible. So yeah, and the final thing, the tweet, right? So here is a new person's sort of experiment or experience with Twitch on their first day. So Twitch, I posted this on Twitch today. It cost me 13 cents. Why should I pay to post this? It's fun to mess with new systems. I can make some money, 5 cents. I immortalize a special moment, timestamped a fun thought, typo and all. So here you go. When he says immortalize, it means that once it's on a blockchain, it's on there forever. You can make changes and edits, but all the changes and edits are also tracked, right? And what that means is that because I pay for that data, I own that data. Okay. And here's the post. He put the post up, but then he goes on to talk even more about it. So, but what does that even mean? I can use tools built by the community. So I think here's some context. Most of you can't see it because for some reason you're not on Twitch, but that's okay. This post isn't stored. You have to store it on Bitcoin. I can use tools built by the community. I think it is Unwriter. Unwriter is a very well-known developer in the space. To search the blockchain and share my information. So this is kind of like a Google for Bitcoin. So this is an interface where it shows, right? So it shows messages that have been posted. I should probably put, let's try a different date. Try 1 year. 365. Look at that, right? So it can find any transactions by Siosi, and they are here. All right, Twitch exclusive. All right, now if you want to encrypt them, make them private, you can. But here you go. They are there. And what this means is that same data can actually be taken across to multiple platforms, right? So imagine if you had all your messages on Twitter and you wanted to move it to Facebook, you could have those things just re-imported into Facebook yourself if you wanted that, right? The next bit here, I can get right to the JPEG using Byco Media. Now, again, a lot of these tools are a little bit disjointed, right? Because it's still so young in the space. But people will have to use different platforms and tools to kind of know their way around in the community to be able to get to these. But I think that will evolve and get better over time. Okay, so here Twitter would call this picture of my family their data. Don't believe me? Look up Smith versus Maryland, 1976. BTC would call this picture spam. Useless non-financial data that should be pruned. This isn't spam, this is life, right? And because this user is paying for their own data to be uploaded, yes, it isn't spam, it's theirs, right? That's what they consider to be of value. I shared this thread as a comment on our cryptocurrency and I got banned for manipulation. That's why I haven't posted on Reddit in a year, right? And how fascinating is that? Because we just talked about Reddit. Now you get a little insight into some of the politics, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, this is still where a lot of newcomers go for information. Today is the kind of day that makes you want to change the world. Okay? So got banned. I'm already walking on eggshells on Twitter, and why? I provided detailed, insightful help for people. I legit want to help people learn to use Bitcoin, but the pump and dumpers and fluffers are still on these platforms. Shake my head. Yeah, so, I mean, this is just, again, showcasing a little bit more around sort of online communities and the different types of communities, right? And how tech is being used in different ways to shape them, right? Again, I'm going to keep talking about Bitcoin and actually how, and just for your information, when I say Bitcoin, I'm talking about BSV. And essentially in the future, in a potentially Bitcoinized world, just imagine that everybody had ownership of their own data because they get to actually pay in sort of micropayments for anything that is sent by them to somebody else. What this means is that in the future, companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, right? Imagine if they had to pay you in order to access your data, right? That just sort of flips a lot of things on its head. It flips advertising models. And I mean, I don't think advertising will go away, but it just provides a different nuance to how we interact online and on the web. And now that everybody is at home, working from home, privacy, there's a lot of concern still about privacy from a lot of folks who see sort of a lot of freedoms being taken away, right, as a result of the crisis. And a lot of power shifts are taking place in the background that you should still kind of keep your eye on while you are staying indoors and doing the right thing by your community as well. So with that, I hope you learned something new today and would love to hear your comments below. I'll include all the links that were featured here today in the show notes in the description box. And remember to like, to share, and do all those great things that you usually get or asked to do on a YouTube video. With that, as always, through patience and persistence, it will come.
The eyes may be able to see, but without a heart, you cannot feel.